This is Jump, Volume 1 of the Robert March Chronicles, Chapter 8.
Dr. March's bunker was small, about the size of an average apartment bedroom. The ceiling, floor, and the bare walls were a muted, dark gray color. The only light was a single beam shining down from the ceiling on the sole object in the room, a chair. Frank and I circled the room, looking for something, anything that might resemble a computer. Nothing. No terminal, no monitor, no outlet. Nothing but an empty room and one chair. I shrugged and walked over to it. It was expensive looking, black, like some kind of futuristic office chair. I sat down and waited for something to happen. Nothing.
What about the device?
Oh, the device. I had almost forgot about that. I reached into my pocket to retrieve it. But as soon as I touched it, the room receded into the background, and I was immersed into a 3D computer operating system. Icons, file folders, thumbnails of documents and videos. It was reminiscent of the older Lexrad OS of a decade or so ago, but infinitely more vivid. It looked like I could literally reach out and grab the icons in my hand. I saw an icon labeled Photos above me and to my left. I reached out for it and found myself slowly spinning out of control, weightless in the strange environment. I began to feel a bout of vertigo coming on. I let go of the device, and the room returned to normal.
What happened? Are you all right?
I shook my head, trying to clear the dizziness. After a moment, I reached in my pocket and touched the device again. Instantly, the room fell away, and I was back in the middle of that startlingly realistic operating system.
What's going on, sir? Are you okay?
I released the device. The room returned. I stood and stepped away from the chair. I tentatively touched the device again. Nothing. I handed the device to Frank. I sat back in the chair. Nothing. I held my hand out. Drop it in my hand, Frank. But be ready to drag me out of this chair when I tell you. This could get interesting. He dropped it, the room fell away, and I was immersed in the amazing operating system again. I quickly learned that I could navigate by moving my hands. It was like flying. I drifted around in a lazy circle for a few moments as I got the hang of it. I spotted the Photos icon again. I touched it and entered the world of Dr. March. Photo after photo flew by as I navigated through his gallery. Mostly company stuff. March at the front of a conference room addressing a group of people. Shots of the laboratories of the March Institute. A birthday party for an employee. Scenes from a company picnic on the beach. Then I saw a folder named Family. I hesitated, then zoomed into it. I didn't recognize the woman who was apparently his wife. She was a dark-haired beauty, but she was no Lori. I wondered who she was. What series of events led to Dr. March meeting and marrying this woman instead of Lori? And I didn't see any pictures of kids. For some reason, I breathed a sigh of relief. I backed out of the gallery and continued my exploration. I saw an icon that was labeled, "Hello, Robert." I reached out and touched it. Suddenly, I was immersed in a three-dimensional rendering of a forest. Holographic, real. I felt wind. I felt the sunshine on my face. I could smell the towering redwoods that surrounded me. I heard birds twittering. A robin landed nearby. Yes, that robin, the one from my backyard long ago in Portland. I was entranced. I was startled from my reverie by a voice coming from behind me. Hello, Robert. I whirled around. It was my other, Dr. Robert March. Or, at least, a digital version of him. I suppose this means I'm dead, he said. That's what they tell me, I replied. Damn. Yeah. He sighed, shook his head, then looked deeply into my eyes. Well, I've got one hell of a story to tell you, old buddy. When it was over, I dropped the device. Frank was standing in front of me with a concerned look on his face.
Are you okay, sir?
We gotta get out of here, Frank.
But what about the switch? Did you find it?
There is no switch, Frank. It's a lie. It's all a pack of lies. I stood, walked over to the door, and placed my hand on the touchpad. The door slid open and we stepped out. The scene we found in the hallway was a bit tense. Tense in the sense that Agent Lewis had Joe backed up to a wall with a nasty-looking Sig Sauer pointed at his cranium. He turned and pointed the gun at me.
Dr. Robert March, I'm placing you under arrest.
Bad mistake. Joe pounced and had Lewis and a very traumatized bunch of tech nerds flat on their bellies with their hands zip-tied behind their backs before they knew what was happening. Joe tucked Lewis's cig into his belt and said,
"Let's get out of here."
We hightailed it down the hall toward the stairwell and headed up. Joe cracked open the door leading to the first floor. The squad of local police had apparently been alerted to the goings-on in the basement and had sealed off all exits from the building.
We've got to go up.
We continued up the stairwell and eventually emerged onto the roof. What now? I asked, looking over the edge at the ground 10 stories below. Seemed like looking over the edge of the roof at the ground below was becoming a habit of mine lately.
Get him to the rendezvous point, Frank. I'll meet you there.
Frank spotted a length of heavy cable that ran down the side of the building to the ground below. He yanked a bit of it out of its restraints and tested it. Satisfied, he looked at me and said,
Let me get on the ground, then you follow.
He began rappelling down the wall. Joe and I watched as Frank skedaddled down the side of the building.
I hope you haven't forgotten your ranger training, Robert.
Actually, I had not. I had even occasionally taken Lori rappelling with me at Yosemite during our dating years. A little different situation than this, granted, but the same basic concept. Frank made it to the ground and waved me on down. I grabbed the cable and eased over the edge. Joe covered the door to the roof with the cig as I descended. About halfway down, I heard gunshots. Apparently the authorities had made it to the roof. It sounded like Joe was holding them off with a bit of suppressing fire. I made it to the second floor and jumped the rest of the way. Joe glanced over the edge at us one last time and waved us on. The gunfire intensified. One last burst, then silence. I stood there looking up at the roof, hoping to see Joe appear, but he didn't.
We gotta go, sir.
I hesitated.
Robert, we gotta go. Now.
As we turned and ran toward the parking lot, a hail of gunfire erupted from the roof. Rounds landed all around us as we zigzagged across the parking lot. Somehow we made it to the car. Frank got behind the wheel, started it up, and floored it. To say that we were shattered is putting it mildly. We had narrowly escaped death from gunfire for the second time that day. Frank had apparently lost a close friend, and my understanding of just what the hell was going on had been radically altered by what my digital alter ego had unveiled to me in that bunker. Frank slowed as we approached the 280 on-ramp. Keep going, I said.
Sir?
We're not going to any rendezvous point, Frank. There's been a change of plans. We're going to Portland.
You've been listening to Jump, Book 1 of the Robert March Chronicles. For more information, visit therobertmarch.com.